take the clothes off my back and not let
On YouTube, it's Nurse Cal, and today we're going to be talking about ABGs. Yes, ABGs, the nightmare. This is very difficult for a lot of us, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a very, very simple way to understand it. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button at the bottom, and leave a comment. Just let me know what you think about my video. All right, so let's go ahead and get right into it. So let's focus on the main component of ABGs. We're talking about pH of our blood. This has to be in perfect balance at all times in order to prevent any complications. This has to be homeostasis. So the normal pH of our blood is 7.35 to 7.45. The higher the pH, the more alkaline. And as you can see, I have base or alkaline to the right. So I think of that as right. It's a shift to the right. And with acid below 7.35 is going to be a shift to the left. That is my mental breakdown of pH. Now I've placed your carbon dioxide on the left, and I've placed the bicarbonate on the right to correlate with acid and base. Now we know that your carbon dioxide is naturally acidic. So 35 to 45 is just right, the just right amount where this won't throw our pH completely off and drive us to the left or decrease our pH to where we're acidic. Now our bicarbonate is naturally alkaline, it's naturally base, but it has to stay between 21 and 28 to be in perfect harmony with our carbon dioxide so that we won't become too alkaline and our bicarbonate is too much and it creates a alkaline environment for our blood, and we're going to jump higher than 7.45 or a shift to the right. Now, let's scroll down and I'm going to show you how I can recognize whether it's going to be respiratory acidosis or respiratory alkalosis versus metabolic alkalosis or metabolic acidosis. Now, like I said, our blood is going to be the main focus of ABGs. So once I've determined what my pH is it acidic or is it alkaline? In this situation, this example, I've determined that my pH is acidic. So now I'm trying to figure out what is the culprit. Who's causing this? Who's throwing my pH out of whack? So now you go from your CO2 to your bicarbonate. You look at those two. Now we have to figure out, is my CO2 causing it? I've determined in this example, it's base. So we know that according to my chart, the further you get away from 45, the more base you become. So 35 being the lowest that the CO2 can be before it starts to throw my pH out of whack. It's going to be below 35 and it's going to be considered more alkaline. So I've determined that my CO2 is alkaline. It's not the culprit. It's trying to compensate. Something else is throwing it off. So I go down to my bicarbonate. I've determined that my bicarbonate is acidic. So if you look at the right side of my chart, the further you get away from 28, which is the highest you can be and still would be within normal limits with the bicarbonate, because the higher you get to 28, the more alkaline you are. I would have determined that my bicarbonate has to be below 21 in order for me to be consider it acidic. So bicarbonate being acidic, it matches my pH. They match. It has to match for you to be able to say it's metabolic acidosis or respiratory acidosis. So that is the key point. Now we're gonna do a example of how you can determine this. So here I have numbers. All right, so I've already configured the equation for you, but just so you can look at the numbers. So pH 7.2 is acidic. It will be a shift to the left. You're shifting to the left, you're going to be more acidic. Okay? So now, who's causing it? The CO2 isn't, because it's 38. It's between 35 and 45, with 45 being closer to acid. 45 is closer to acid. So that means it's not causing the problem. As you can see, 45, 35. It's right smack in the middle at 38. So it's within normal length ranges. It's trying to place us in homeostasis. It's fine. So if we go back to the bicarbonate, it's 10. Remember, 28 is closer to base. 21 and 28 is within normal range. It's below 21, meaning it's closer to being acidic. So therefore, I've determined that the bicarbonate matches the pH. So it's causing the acidotic state. So it's going to be metabolic acidosis. And it's not compensated. It's trying to, it's not completely compensated because our pH is still completely off. Now, if it's trying to compensate, we're going to have a respiratory compensation. So if our CO2 was to completely drop, let's say to 20, remember, the further you get away from 45, the more alkaline CO2 becomes. And it's trying to adjust. So say that number was 20. Then I can say we have metabolic acidosis with partial compensation. Now, if our pH was, let's say, 35, that's within normal range. It's within normal range, but we're looking at the CO2 being alkaline and this being acidic because it's low. I mean, you may not see this scenario, but in this situation, I would choose it's still being metabolic acidosis, but it's completely compensated, meaning that this is way off, and this is way off, but we still have the correct pH, so it's completely compensated. So let's go back to this chart because I want you guys to take a mental note of this, and I want you to write it down and have time to practice. But this is a perfect way you can learn ABGs. All right, so now that we have time to chart that and write it down, like I said, this is something that you can practice. You can drop a small little table on your piece of paper, because I know in nursing school we could have a blank piece of paper for scratch paper, especially if we were going to do dosage calculation. So I would just, in the middle of a test, I would just have the numbers in my head and I would just write them down. And this will be a perfect reference to solving your ABGs. Again, my name is Nurse Cal. Leave a comment at the bottom. Let me know how you like my video. And stay tuned for more information. I'll have more updates later on, creating more nursing content.
You take the clothes off my